Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Got your Bible with you. Turn to the book of Proverbs. We'll be looking at a few of those today. You know, I love this story. It's a short story about a young man. He's working in a grocery store and he's stocking groceries on a shelf, you know, in one of those aisles. And an older lady comes up to this young man and she says, "Young man, I need to buy half a head of lettuce. Can I do that?" He says, "Boy, I really don't know. We don't sell half heads of lettuce. I've not seen one. I've never seen that in our store for sale." And she says, "Well, could you just cut one of those in half? Just cut one of them in half and sell me half a head of lettuce." He says, "I don't know about all this. Let me run back. I'm going to go talk to my manager. I'm going to check with him and see what he says." And so he goes, he runs to the back of the store, he finds the manager, and he says, "Look, there's some old bag up front who wants to buy half a head of lettuce." And he could tell from the look on his manager's face that that lady had followed him to the back of the store. And she was standing right behind him. So he turns and he looks at the woman and he says, "And this lovely lady would like to buy the other half head of lettuce that we would have." Well, they check her out and she goes on her way. And the manager comes to this young man and he says, "Boy, that was quick thinking. Where are you from?" And the young man says, "Well, I'm from Toronto, home of great hockey players and ugly women." And the manager says, "My wife is from Toronto." And the young man says, "Really? What team did she play for?" Boy, I think we've encountered a number of different characters in our journey through Proverbs so far, and they've been fun ones, right? We've had the simpleton, the fool. Last time it was the hothead. And today we meet the big mouth. Near the beginning of this series, Michelle, we'll just tell you who it was. She was describing something to me that she noticed. And she was, doing whatever she does with these sermons, posting them and such, and she noticed how, what she explained was a little bit funny to her. The title, The Simpleton, it was, it's The Simpleton, and then it was, me, along with my picture. I don't know what she does. And she thought that was a great explanation, it's like, this is Jason Neiman, The Simpleton. And next it was the fool, Jason Neiman. And now it was the hothead, Jason Neiman. And today it's just another great, in the line of great titles describing me. The big mouth, Jason Neiman. Now, what bothers me is that in a couple of weeks I was planning on doing a sermon entitled Adulterer. So I'm thinking I'm not going to go that way. I'm probably going to find a different title for that one. I think I just can't do that. I have occasionally been your garden variety fool. From time to time, I lose my cool. I become a hothead. But those are, they don't happen every day. They're now and again kind of a thing. But today, if my parents were here, my brothers, my wife, my kids, any of my friends, all of my enemies, if they were here today, that they could all testify that for me, every day is a struggle not to be a big mouth. This would have been a great week to have a guest speaker. I should probably just, handed it off to somebody else and just let you squirm with it. Because I can only speak this morning, not from my great wisdom on this subject, and not from my expertise on how to, overcome. I can only speak from my brokenness, from my sin, from my ability to hurt people, and my ability to cause trouble. Because that's what big mouths do. A big mouth is a special kind of fool in Proverbs. He does not have the wisdom to use words properly. The big mouth's problem is that he fails to appreciate and fails to understand the potency, the effectiveness of words, especially words spoken out loud. Words we say to other people, words about others, the spoken word. Listen to these proverbs. We're going to look at a few of them starting out here. They're talking about the power of the spoken word. 4 proverbs for you this morning. First, Proverbs 11:9. With their mouths, the godless destroy their neighbors. Proverbs 12:18. The words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise bring healing. And this next one. Proverbs 15:4. Gentle words are a tree of life. A deceitful tongue crushes the spirit. Proverbs 18:21. The tongue can bring death or life. Those who love to talk will reap the consequences. Now notice, all those proverbs there, they point to both the positive and the negative potential of the words we say. If you look at them, our spoken words can bring healing or they can bring wounding. They can make life lighter, or they can make it heavier. They can crush you. They can build up, or they can tear down. They can create, or they can destroy. And behind the description of how powerful our words are is a thought in the wisdom tradition, the tradition of knowledge and wisdom that's passed down for God's people here. The tradition of Israel is this tradition of a theology of our speech. And it's built on the idea that God's power is manifested through God's spoken word. But we see it from the very beginning. You look at the very first page of your Bible. The first words in the Bible, in Genesis 1, in the story of creation, and it goes, and God said, let there be light. God said. He spoke a word and there was light. God speaks creation into existence. And God said, and it was so, and it keeps on going, and God said, and it's so, and it keeps on going all the way like that through Genesis chapter 1. There's a rhythm to that story in Genesis 1. God speaks and something happens. Something comes into being. And there's more to it than just God creating by his spoken word. There are different places in the Word of God where it says that God's judgment against those who are bent on doing evil, God's judgment is described as, in poetic imagery there, as God melting the world. Or God melting creation with a spoken word. In Psalm 46:6. He says, nations are in an uproar, kingdoms fall, God lifts his voice, and the earth melts. We get the idea that God is bringing life into the world, into existence, with a single word. But God is also taking things off the earth with just a single word. God can create, and God can destroy with just a spoken word. There's power there. And it shouldn't really be a surprise to us that the wisdom tradition attributes all of this power that we as human beings have, as beings created in the image of God, we've got some power as well, being created in the image of God. We've got God's creative capacity at work within us, to a limited degree, of course, that the words that we speak, the words that we say to each other, they have loads of power. They have so much power. I mean, to a lesser scale, but we are creating and we are destroying worlds with our words. Where we're shaping and we're defining reality. Where we're creating the world that we're living in with our words. The words we speak to each other and about each other can be life-giving. Or they can be deadly. Several years ago, there was a story in the news about a forest fire. This forest fire destroyed thousands of acres of timber, millions and millions of dollars worth of property. And we hear about these stories from time to time. And the reason this fire started was a woman had lit a cigarette and then just tossed that still lit match to the side of the road. And as she was driving away, as she was driving off from that scene, she left behind her the makings of one of nature's most destructive forces. And that's what a big mouth does. The big mouth goes along and he's got a careless word here and a negative word there and a malicious word dropped alongside of the road. And before you know it, there's this raging fire following in his wake. Proverbs encourages us, teaches us, demands that we consider our words. Because every word that we speak is like a little bottle of nitroglycerin that can set the whole world on fire if we're not handling it carefully. And Proverbs describes all kinds of foolish speech that big mouths set the world on fire with. There are angry words. We just sang a song about that. There are deceptive words. There are words that we speak with intention to harm. Words we say to others that we want to cut them, hurt them with. Name calling. Belittling insults. And there are words we speak about others behind their backs. Proverbs calls that gossip. Nothing can set an organization, a team, a church, our community, nothing can set one of those groups on fire faster than talking about us without us in the room. When we start talking about us without us in the room, so that we can explain the other side of the story, so we can explain ourselves and defend ourselves, so that we can defend our honor, so that we can possibly admit and say, I was wrong. We can say, I've committed a sin. I'll never let it happen again. Would you can ask for forgiveness. Please forgive me. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but at least there is a possibility that, you can have forgiveness, you can have reconciliation, you can look the person in the eye and all that, it can happen when you're there, when you're in the room. You know how it works when you're telling a story about someone? And maybe that person's not your favorite person in the world, and somehow, it's instinctive, I think. We know how to tell a story in a way so that you just shave a little truth here, and you shave a little truth there, and just a little bit. And you make that person you're talking about, the one you're telling the story about, you make that person seem a whole lot worse than they really are. And in doing so, of course, you're making yourself look better. I've done it. It is easy to do. And of course, I've had it done to me. And it's one of the most soul-crushing, community-killing, relationship-destroying forces in the world. This talking about us without us. Listen to this proverb, Proverbs 28:18. Proverbs 25:18, that'll work. Telling lies about others is as harmful as hitting them with an axe, wounding them with a sword, or shooting them with a sharp arrow. It is that destructive. And it's so tempting. Consider this proverb, Proverbs 18:8. wrong one. There you go. Proverbs 18. Hey, the words of a gossip are like choice morsels. They go down to the innermost parts. Someone starts telling a story. You've been there. They're telling a story and it's like, that's awful. Tell me more. Not because I'm a gossip, but because, being a gossip's wrong. We all know that. It's just I want some more information so that I can pray intelligently about the situation. I'm not a gossip. I'm really not. I'm a prayer warrior. Tell me the story so I can go in and learn more about it, and I'll tell others so that others can be praying about it as well. Yeah, that works. Proverbs, how about this? Proverbs 26:20. Fire goes out without wood, and quarrels disappear when gossip stops. That's a good one, isn't it? Fire goes out without wood, and quarrels cease when gossip stop. This is really helpful, especially if you always find yourself in some kind of a conflict. Maybe people are talking, to you about someone else, and you're talking to someone else about somebody else, and you're always in this kind of turmoil. There's always some kind of something going on, blowing up around you. This turbulent atmosphere. And that's what, he said. You keep passing along. Well, she said this, and well, he said that, and you're going around the office, and maybe you don't even know you're doing it. But you know what's happening. Maybe that's the reason that you're always involved in that kind of a situation. You spend, more time talking about someone than actually talking to that person. And, explaining to them that you have a problem with that. It's like, I got this problem. When you're talking about them, without them, you just throw more wood on the fire. It's when we talk to each other. That's, it takes emotional maturity. Talking to each other, it takes a bit of wisdom. Talking to each other, okay, sometimes it's hard. It takes strength to just, to sit down, to look them in the eye and say, this is bothering me. Some of us don't like confrontation. But you gotta do it. You gotta talk with them. You gotta have a conversation. You gotta have a hard conversation. It's generally not as bad as you think. But when we actually talk with each other, instead of talking about each other, instead of trying to solve our problems by talking about each other, we can clear up channels of communication. We can clarify things that we think are going on. Maybe there's going to be forgiveness. Maybe there's going to be reconciliation. Perhaps there will actually be peace. But those things almost never come about when we're talking about them without them. It just sows more seeds of destruction. It throws more wood on the fire. So there's this negative side to our speech, that our speech can cause so much harm to others. But it gets worse, because not only can our words hurt other people, but our words can also, they can reveal the state of our hearts. They can show other people things. You can pretend, you can hide, you can act like you're more holy, you're more righteous than you really are, but sooner or later, you're going to say something. Listen to this teaching from Jesus. I think what we're going to read here, this teaching from Jesus probably goes in the category of one of the scariest things that Jesus ever said. It's in Matthew chapter 12. You might want to turn there. It's a little bit of a long reading. Matthew chapter 12, but I'll have it on the screen for you as well. Starting in verse 33 and following. Hold on to your seats. A tree is identified by its fruit. If a tree is good, its fruit will be good. If a tree is bad, its fruit will be bad. You brood of snakes. All right, that's telling us that Jesus is really worked up here, right? I mean, he's angry. You brood of snakes. How could evil men like you speak what is good and right? For whatever is in your heart, determines what you say. A good person produces good things from the treasury of a good heart, and an evil person produces evil things from the treasury of an evil heart. And I tell you this, Jesus steps forward. He says, come on, get closer here. Listen very carefully. You must give an account on Judgment Day for every idle word you speak. The words you say will either acquit you or condemn you. In this passage, Jesus is talking to some Pharisees. And the Pharisees are attributing the good works that Jesus is doing to Satan. The Pharisees are saying, we're the men of God. We're the people of God. We speak for God. We represent God. We are closer to God because of our holiness. We're closer than anyone else. Yet when the Son of God, Jesus, shows up and begins doing God's work, they say, that's not God. That's Satan. And Jesus says, you can proclaim and you can act like you're holier than thou all you want. But it's your words. It's what you're saying about me that betrays and portrays the darkness of your heart. Your words betray you, Jesus says to them. And to us. The words we speak, the belittling, the name-calling, the shaming, the hypercritical picking apart, we normally say them, and correct me if I'm wrong here, we normally say them to feel better about ourselves. And when we use that kind of negative language, what it does is it reveals the state of our hearts. It reveals the brokenness, the darkness, the insecurity, the guilt, the shame. We're projecting those things onto others. Those things that we are feeling inside. When we use those words of others, they almost never accurately describe who they are and what they are feeling and what's going on inside of them. But they do describe who we are and what's going on inside of us when we speak them. And the idea, thinking about what Jesus says here, the idea that someday I would have to give an account, that someday I would have to explain, I would have to somehow defend every careless, negative, sarcastic. I thought that was one of my spiritual gifts. I really did. But no, it's not. We have to, our sarcastic words that hurt someone, those words we use that tear other people down, that sow seeds of discord, that the words we use that don't build people up, that destroy worlds. Church, that thought terrifies me. Because all I'm going to be able to do, all I've got at that point, all I can do right now is just throw myself on the mercy of God and just, pray that His love is greater and bigger than mine and your sin, including those sins we commit with our big mouths. Proverbs comes across, when you're reading through the book of Proverbs, it comes across with some really severe warnings. The consequences of foolish speech, they are clear. And they are severe. But it's not all negative. It's not. Because Proverbs also casts this powerful vision for the power that our words have to do good. Our words can tear down, but they can build up. Our words can do good when we choose them and speak them in an appropriate way. Listen to these Proverbs about positive speech here. Proverbs 15:4. Gentle words are a tree of life. Think about how important the tree of life, that image is in the Bible. It's in there in the beginning, it's there at the end, it shows up at different points all the way through. And gentle words are like drawing near to the tree of life. It's beautiful. But this one, Proverbs 16:24. Gracious words are a honeycomb, sweet to the soul, and healing to the bones. How about this next one? Proverbs 18:20. Wise words satisfy like a good meal. The right words bring satisfaction. What kind of world do you want to live in? What kind of world do you want to help create with your words? Do you want to live in the kind of world where negative and insulting and belittling and divisive words are tearing down, the people around you, and they're just pulling the world apart, making us, ourselves and others angry and anxious? Or do you want to live in the kind of world where your words build us up? Where your words hold us together? Your words give us and yourself, and give everybody hope. Because you're helping to create the very world you're living in with the words that we say. What's it like when we speak life? What would it be like to live in a world where we speak words of grace and mercy and peace and words of joy? Words of acceptance and love. What kind of world would we create if we spoke gospel words? Church, what kind of world do you want to live in? Proverbs warns us that we can do great harm with our words. We need to learn how to use our words well. We can speak words of wisdom rather than harming others. The right word can be like honey to the soul. So let me close here this morning by giving you 2 tips found in Proverbs for how to use words well. And the first one is this. Think before you speak. I know that's obvious, but it's in Proverbs. That's what Proverbs tells us to do. Proverbs 15:28. The heart of the godly thinks carefully before speaking. I mean, that's how you recognize a godly heart. They speak carefully. The mouth of the wicked overflows or gushes with evil words. They just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. Just think before you speak. Most of us I think most of us take it for granted now. It's been going on for years, but have you ever thought about how revolutionary it is that our email programs have this feature, and hopefully you got it checked and turned on. They got this feature that as you type a message, before you send it, and maybe even as you're typing it, it gives you feedback. And before you can send that message to someone else, it shows you all your misspelled words, and it gives you all your grammatical errors. And before you can send it, it gives you one final warning. It says, are you sure this is exactly what you want to say? And you want to send this way? Are you sure you want to send this out like this? Or do you want to revise it and refine your communication here? It's always working for you there in the background, all the time. It makes us look a lot smarter than we really are, trust me. It's catching us. It's helping us. Wouldn't it be great if there was a program we could download into our minds that would function in much the same way? I mean, it's something that would be there running in the background all the time. As before we say something, and they'd be like, are you sure you want to say that? Are you sure you don't want to refine that statement? Are you sure you want to send that message? How much money would you be willing to pay for an app that would warn you before you make a joke to your buddy as you're standing in the airport line and you're joking to him about how he looks like a terrorist with that beard that he has? Maybe there would be a beep or something, or maybe just black out, or I don't know. A little voice maybe come along and say, do you want to miss your flight? Do you want to spend all night in an airport holding cell? Think before you speak. Or wouldn't it be great before you say something negative about one of your coworkers to another coworker as you're washing your hands at the bathroom sink? Before you say it, that this message would pop up on your mental screen, one of those fancy things like going on, and it says, hold it. Are you sure that person you're about to talk about isn't in the stall behind you? Just think about it. Take a moment. Are you sure you want to say that? Or what about before you say that word? What about before you just verbalize that label that will melt your child's spirit? Melt a world. What if before you did that, a message flashed across your mind's eye, that this warning comes up and says, remember, you are creating or destroying worlds with every word you say. Think before you speak. Now the good news here is that there's an app for that. It's called Wisdom. It's a gift from God, and it's available for download. All you have to do is ask for it, and God gives it. You have to activate it, and it takes some time, and you have to train yourself. But once you download it and activate it, and you learn how to use it after you go through some training, it's there. It's in the background of our mind. It's working all the time, filtering everything that you say. Now, it does slow down your word processor a little bit, maybe a lot sometimes. And there is some lag time, but that's good. That's positive. That's how you know it's working, and that's the value of it, that it slows us down and makes us think, to ask some questions. It's always in the background working. Is what I'm about to say, is it true? Is it helpful? Inspiring? Is it really necessary to say that what you're about to say? Is it kind? Think before you speak. And if what you're about to say, if it doesn't pass that test, wisdom says, maybe we should delete this one. Why don't you sit down for a while, wait with it, and see if you can revise it and maybe reword it. Think before you speak. And the second proverb is this. I like this one. Talk less. Talk less. If you want to use words well, talk less. Proverbs says in Proverbs chapter 10, verse 19, it says, too much talk leads to sin. Be sensible and keep your mouth shut. It's just the law of averages, isn't it? The longer you talk, the more you say, the more likely you are to say something negative or exaggerate some truth or deceive someone. The longer you talk, the more you say, the more likely you are to misuse your words. So simply, Proverbs says, talk less. And there is so much value in this. Proverbs 17, verse 27. It says, a truly wise person uses few words. A person with understanding is even-tempered. One of the signs of wisdom is that, that person doesn't talk as much as the other people do. They use few words. Why? Well, because wisdom recognizes that there are many, many times, not always, there are some times to speak, but there are many, many times that silence is gold. Proverbs 17, verse 28. Even fools are thought wise when they keep silent. With their mouths shut, they seem intelligent. That is the best one of the whole bunch, isn't it? Do you want to appear smarter? You want people to think that you're more intelligent, than you really are, wiser than you really are? It's so simple. Talk less, which is really the best argument I know for shorter sermons, which is why I'm going to stop talking right now. So let's stand. Let's see.